Good afternoon and welcome to FTA's fourth and final stakeholder event to support implementation of the federal mask requirement for public modes of transportation. I'm Matt Welbus, FTA's Executive Director, and thank you for joining us today. Today we will provide some brief updates and discuss questions we received since the roundtable discussion we hosted last Tuesday. Before we get started, let me cover a few housekeeping items. First, if you missed any of our previous mask requirement sessions, you can access recordings on FTA's YouTube channel and our COVID-19 website. The department also has posted a number of FAQs on the DOT website. You may find answers to your questions in the general FAQs, which apply across transportation industry, or the FTA section of FAQs that are specific to transit. During our session today, we will encourage you to submit your questions and comments. To do so, select the Q&A on the right side of your screen. You can submit questions using your name or submit anonymously, and our plan is to respond to today's questions and those submitted by email to our transitmaskup@dot.gov email account by posting FAQs to the DOT website. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce FTA's Acting Administrator, Nuria Fernandez. With more than 35 years in the transportation industry, Acting Administrator Fernandez is an experienced and inspiring leader, and we are lucky to have her leading FTA. Nuria comes to our agency after serving as the General Manager and CEO of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority for the past 7 years, as well as the President of the American Public Transportation Association. Now, let me turn it over to you, Nuria.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. So I would like to give a special welcome to those who have not joined us before at our mask requirement stakeholder sessions. And to those of you who are back, thanks for returning. So I hope that you have found what you have heard and the types of questions that have been submitted and we have provided responses for helpful, because I want to make sure that you have all the information you need to successfully implement the federal mask requirement. As you all may know at this point that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention order became effective on February 1st, and the Transportation Security Administration Security Directive required all transit passengers and workers to wear masks on transit vehicles and in transit facilities. We have hosted a series of stakeholder calls, and this will be the last of those sessions. But last week we hosted a roundtable discussion with transit labor union leaders and transit executives. And it was a lively discussion, very informative. We've received a lot of interest about follow-on questions. As Matt mentioned, you can hear that session in its entirety on FTA's YouTube channel. Since then, we have continued to collect your responses and concerns. So including during additional discussions US DOT has held with labor union leaders. We have received over 400 questions and comments through our stakeholder call chat feature and the transit mask up at dot.gov email. And your feedback is invaluable. We can only give you what you need if we hear from you as to what that is. And we have heard concerns about enforcement from our labor leaders and the potential, incidents that are occurring with operators as they are enforcing the mandate. So there are a lot of questions on who must comply and when, and we continue to provide responses in cooperation with TSA in that area. In addition to hosting these sessions, we are taking action in support of your implementation of the mask requirement, which are part of our commitment to help the entire industry be successful in implementing the CDC order, and which is going to save lives. So I would like to now just spend a little time talking about our partnership with the National Transit Institute so that we can continue offering virtual courses on assault awareness and prevention for transit operators. There's been such high demand for these courses that we're working with NTI to expand learning options. So in addition to providing additional trainings through that channel, we will offer the course as a video that will be available on YouTube by the end of this month, which will provide maximum flexibility to those who cannot schedule the time off work or even within their shifts to take these courses. So while this is the last of our scheduled stakeholder calls for February, we will continue to provide opportunities to share information and resources. So please check the FTA website for the most current information. Before we start the question and answer portion, I want to say again that we greatly appreciate the commitment from all of you to provide safe and efficient transportation to everyone during these unprecedented times. And we know that it has not been easy, but we hope that our support at the federal level has been of great help. So now I would like to ask FTA's Chief Safety Officer, Henrika Buchanan, to facilitate our Q&A session. Henrika?
Thank you, Nuria. And thanks to all of you for being here today. I will now pose some questions that we've received over the past week about the federal mask requirement to Acting Administrator Fernandez. These questions cover the areas of civil rights, applicability, and implementation aspects of the requirement. So, Acting Administrator Fernandez, the first question is, are riders with disabilities exempt from mask requirements?
Thanks, Henrika. The CDC order exempts people with disabilities who cannot wear a mask or cannot safely wear a mask because of their disability, so as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is a narrow exemption to be applied in very limited circumstances. It is not meant to cover persons for whom mask wearing may only be difficult. The TSA security directive gives some very specific examples of people unable to wear masks due to safety reasons who would be exempt, and including those who do not understand how to wear or remove the mask due to cognitive impairment, who cannot wear or remove a mask on their own due to dexterity or mobility impairments, or who cannot communicate promptly to ask someone else to remove the mask due to speech impairments or language disorders.
Thank you, Nuria. Question number 2. May a transit agency require requests for exemptions from mask requirements to be made in advance of travel?
Yes, and that's a very important question. Yes, the TSA security directive states that the operators may further require that persons seeking exemption from the requirement to wear a mask make that request and accommodation in advance. Operators may even impose requirements or conditions of carriage on persons requesting an exemption from the requirement to wear a mask, including a medical consultation with a third party, medical documentation by a licensed medical provider, and or other information as determined by the operator. The exemption process is likely easier to implement in systems that require riders to make trip reservations in advance, and especially in ADA complementary paratransit service, where the agency has already confirmed the eligible rider's disability status and functional limitations, and where the submittal of medical and other information is routine. For fixed route bus and rail systems, which do not require rider reservations, granting such exemptions and ensuring only individuals qualify for an exemption ride without wearing a mask may be more challenging. So consistent with the CDC order and the TSA security directive, fixed route transit providers may require individuals to request an exemption in advance of being allowed to travel and could issue riders a card or other document noting the exemption to present to transit personnel on future trips.
Thank you. Question number 3. Is a transit agency required to adopt a specific process for handling exemption requests, such as through its already required ADA reasonable modification or policy procedures?
Generally, no. The TSA directive does not dictate a specific process. Most individuals, including those with disabilities, can tolerate and safely wear a mask. However, a narrow subset of individuals with disabilities may not be able to wear a mask or cannot safely wear a mask. Those who cannot safely wear a mask, for example, a person with a disability who, for reasons related to the disability, would be physically unable to remove a mask without assistance if breathing becomes obstructed, should not be required to wear one. The current exemption for people with disabilities who cannot wear masks safely is in the TSA security directive and is not a reasonable modification under the ADA. Agencies have discretion in how they process such exemption requests. However, Any process adopted should provide a prompt response to the person requesting the exemption. The process must also be sufficiently advertised so that people know how to make the request. Public information explaining the process also should be provided in languages other than English, consistent with the agency's Title VI program.
Thank you. Question number 4. Does a transit agency need to ensure frontline workers and other personnel understand the exemption process for people with disabilities?
The answer is yes. Regardless of the exemption process and agency that the agency adopts, training and providing information to personnel on the process is key to ensuring effective implementation and the appropriate communications with riders with disabilities. The DOT ADA regulations require personnel to be prepared to properly assist and treat individuals with disabilities who use the service in a respectful and courteous way, with appropriate attention to the difference among individuals with disabilities.
Thank you. So question number 5, does the mask requirement apply to Section 5310 operators?
The CDC order applies to all recipients and subrecipients of federal funding under the Federal Transit Program that own, operate, or maintain a public transportation system, including an entity that receives federal financial assistance or only under the formula grants for enhanced mobilities of seniors and individuals with disabilities.
And question 6, does the mask requirement apply in administrative facilities?
And we've had this question before. The CDC order applies to administrative facilities that are housed within transportation hubs. So administrative facilities include, for example, executive offices, training facilities, and construction field offices. Transit employees must wear masks while on public transportation conveyances and on the premises of a transportation hub, unless they are the only person in the work area, such as in a private office. As applied to transit, public transportation conveyances are transit vehicles being used in revenue service. A transportation hub is any location where people gather to await, board, or disembark public transportation, such as a bus and ferry terminals, train and subway stations, and ride-share pickup locations. It also includes any facility directly involved in the provision of transit service, such as ticket sales offices, vehicle maintenance facilities, vehicle cleaning facilities, operations control centers, electric vehicle charging facilities, operator break areas, and fueling facilities. Per the CDC order, persons for whom a mask would create a risk to workplace health, safety, or job duty as determined by the relevant workplace safety guidelines or the federal regulations are not required to wear a mask. A narrow subset of employees with disabilities also are exempt from the mask requirement under CDC order because it would be unsafe for them to wear a mask due to their disability. The CDC states it will issue additional guidance regarding persons who cannot wear a mask under this exemption.
So thank you, Acting Administrator Fernandez. I think we've been able to provide some pertinent details on implementing this federal requirement with the questions and answers we've shared today. I want to remind our listeners to send their questions to transitmaskup@dot.gov. That's transitmaskup@dot.gov. I will now turn back to Acting Administrator Fernandez to close out the call.
I hope you can hear me, but I have lost
We can hear
the
you.
volumes. Perfect, because I didn't hear your last statement, Henrika. But thank you, Henrika, and I want to thank Matt as well for organizing today's session. And of course, I want to thank all of our transit stakeholders for your time today. You know, Secretary Buttigieg's leadership and the Biden administration will continue to make safety our #1 priority throughout the transit industry. Again, we're dedicated to keeping transit workers and passengers safe, and this mask requirement will help us support that goal. So we plan to continue engaging with you. Please send your questions to the email address we provided earlier, and also visit the FTA Transit Mask Up webpage for updates. In the meantime, continue staying safe and keep us informed. Thanks again, and I'll turn it back to Matt for closure.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes today's session. We appreciate you joining us.